Last weekend I was down in southern Minnesota for a wedding, and the farmers were all out in force planting their fields of rich black earth. 'Tis the season, planting time in Minnesota. Today's Bible reading is perfect for this time of year. It's the parable of the sower, or the planting farmer. And Jesus tells it in Mark chapter 4. Again, Jesus began to teach by the lake. The crowd that gathered around him was so large that he got into a boat and sat on it out in the lake, while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. He taught them many things by parables, and in his teaching said, "Listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so that they did not bear grain. Still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, multiplying 30, 60, or even 100 times. Then Jesus said, 'He who has ears to hear, let him hear.' Then Jesus said to them, 'Don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable?'" The disciples don't get it, but you can hardly blame them. Parables can be tricky to understand, even if you have ears to hear. And besides, they were fishermen and tax collectors and who knows what else. But throwing seeds around willy-nilly, as the farmer does, just wasn't something they understood. And neither do we. When we think of working in the soil, it's less like planting acres of grain than it is landscaping in our backyards. You drive down to Home Depot and you wheel out a cart full of potted shrubs, flats of flowers, bags of mulch, and rolls of landscaping fabric. If you're smart, you've done some research ahead of time to maximize your planting success. What kind of plants grow best in your kind of soil? Do you put in shade-loving plants like hostas or sun-loving plants like daylilies? How tall would they grow? What should be along the border and what should be in the back of the planting? And when you do plant, you'll be careful to water them and to fertilize them and to protect each plant so that every one of them grows lush and beautiful just the way you planned it. And your landscape looks perfect. That's how you want it. We just don't think about planting the way Jesus' farmer does. And even if we do plant food crops, we probably plant them in nice, neat rows. We might even draw out a plan of our garden to make sure that it's just right. I was paging through an old gardening book, and I came across this plan that I had drawn up 20 years ago for a garden. I marked down every row of lettuce and beans and carrots. I even made little X's where the individual tomato plants were to go. Now, I don't recall exactly what happened to this garden. That was 20 years ago. But I do remember working late into the night one time to get everything perfect in the garden, only to find that while I was down on my hands and knees, there was another person in the garden. Well, not a person. Another four-legged creature, a deer, had come into the garden, and while I was weeding and carefully tending my plants, the deer was right behind me eating half a row of beans, paying no attention whatsoever to the fact that I was there, happily destroying my plans. Things don't always go according to plans. The old farmers knew this. They didn't get down on their hands and knees, carefully spacing out each seed and laying them out in precise rows. No, they reached into their bag and they grabbed a handful of seed and they just threw it across the ground. Some of it fell in the path. Some fell in the rocks, some fell in the weeds, and some fell in the good black dirt. And that seed made up for all the rest. Jesus understood this. And he understood that doing the work of God is more like being this old scatter seed farmer than it is like the landscaping that we do today. Of course, we Christians like everything to go according to our plans. We want everyone to line up and behave the way we want them to. We want to be guaranteed of success. We never want to fail. But working for God is not like that. Working for God, being a servant of Christ, is messy. And quite frankly, it often looks like failure. Jesus explains. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable? The farmer sows the word. Some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. Others, like seed sown on rocky places, hear the word and at once receive it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away.